Hi, I'm Jonathan M0JSX and thanks for joining me today. For the last couple of months I've been playing with the Yaesu FTM 500, and although I've not played with it extensively or exclusively, but I have played with it enough that I've now got some opinions that I can share with you, and ultimately whether it's worth the money. Let's start with the good. First off, it is loud. It has a really loud speaker, and in fact it has two really loud speakers, and when combined they are brilliant. If you have it in the car and you've mounted it in such a position where you can hear the speaker from the main body as well as the speaker from the front panel, the two together are insanely loud. For the purposes of testing this, I took it on a couple of trips with me. I had it mounted sort of on the dash on a piece of wooden board, and I have to say, not once did I think that I needed to have any kind of external speaker on it, because if you can have that front facing speaker so it's actually pointed towards you, it's so loud you won't even need to turn the radio up all the way. The two work together with this AESS system, so there's a little bit of delay between the front speaker and the speaker in the main body. Supposedly that helps sort of lift out the audio from the road noise. I can't say it worked particularly well in my testing, although I think if you had the two speakers mounted a bit further away, then you possibly would notice it. Also, it has a fast and reliable GPS receiver. I have quite a cave here in the loft, and not all devices are able to find a GPS signal in here. The FTM 500 didn't fail once to find a GPS satellite when inside, and when outside in the car, for instance, it found them within a matter of seconds. So the GPS receiver is really good. I'm not sure if it's the same GPS receiver that Yaesu have used in the FT5, but that's also pretty quick in my testing as well. It has 50 watts out on both 2 meters and 70 sems, which I know is not new for the FTM 500. I know that sort of the FTM 300, the FTM 200, and even the FTM 400, which preceded it, also did 50 watts out on both bands. But my most recent mobile radio is the Yaesu FT8900, and although that's 50 watts out on 10, 6 and 2, it's only 35 watts out on 70 sems, so it was nice to have a bit more power out on 70 sems as well. C4 FM and the Wires X system, it works fantastically on the FTM 500 with that touch screen. It's really easy to understand where you're going within C4 FM and the Wires X system. Again, that's not new. We've seen that before on pretty much all of the Wires X capable radios, but it's nice to know the FTM 500 continues with that ease to use. And the touchscreen, nice and colourful, nice and bright, very easy to see it even in sort of semi-direct sunlight in the car. Not once did I have to sort of shield the screen from the sunlight. I could always see it, and it's also nice and responsive as well. Let's move on to the less good parts. So when the radio first launched, there was a known issue with DTMF encoding, and Yaesu have now released a firmware fix for it, so which I have done on the radio that I've got. And the firmware update process is pretty simple, although I think it's recommended you use quite a fast SD card. I was trying to use a class 4 SD card and the radio didn't like that so much. But it did work, and the DTMF issue is now fixed. But really, that shouldn't have existed to start with. I think it's quite an oversight for Yaesu to release a radio where there is such a blindingly obvious fault, even if it is just a firmware fault. But I think that's quite the oversight to start with. So 10 out of 10 for Yaesu fixing it relatively quickly. I mean, it's been a few months, but really that shouldn't have been shipped from the factory with that fault to start with. The menu system isn't very enjoyable to use. It's back to a really long list. Similar, when I was using it, it made me feel similar to using like an FT817 or an 857, where you're just scrolling all the time to get to the menu item you're after. There's a touch screen. It would have been nice for Yaesu to actually use the touch screen for the menu, like they did with the FTM 400, for instance. Now, I know that there is a series of buttons that you can press when you turn the radio on in order to access a menu system very similar to the FTM 400. I know that exists within the radio. I haven't done that because I wanted to test the radio as shipped by Yaesu. And although you can change it, and I probably would recommend you do, it's not how Yaesu have shipped the radio, it's not how Yaesu have designed the radio to work, and it's not how the manual says the radio works. So while you can do that, and yeah, you probably will find the navigation of the menu so much easier if you do, the manual isn't going to make no sense. So yeah, it's a shame that Yaesu have gone down the list version again. They've kind of gone back a few years. Perhaps they might change that with a future firmware update. Finally, although the radio has been out for about 6 months now, Yaesu still have not released their free programming software for it. Now obviously RT Systems does have their software available, and I have to say that the RT Systems software, typically speaking, always trumps the Yaesu software 9 days till Sunday. But if you're just wanting to put a few repeaters in, then the Yaesu software is more than adequate. And I don't think that after 6 months, we should really be still waiting for software to be released. I think that Yaesu need to really get on the board with getting their software team talking to the hardware team and making sure the software is available at the same time the radio ships. I don't think we'd ever see this from ICOM. ICOM, for instance, would always make sure the software is good to go before the radio is shipping. For instance, ICOM have already released the software for the ID50, and that's only just hit the shelves. You can see my video on the ID50 just up there. So what does the radio sound like? Well, I'm going to cut away to a couple of clips now. The first one is the radio receiving in C4 FM. The second one is it receiving in analog FM, and it's just to give you a bit of a sense of what the radio sounds like. Now, obviously you're not hearing the radio directly, you're hearing it as picked up by microphones in my camera. So it's never going to be a true representation, but hopefully it gives you some idea of how good the radio does sound.
We are located in South Georgia, about 60 miles north of the Florida-Georgia line, kind of smack dab in the central south of the state. Got some pretty warm temperatures this morning. Let me see, about 27 degrees Celsius right now, but we're going to go up to about 32, 33 degrees Celsius today.
From the 7 STO. Yeah, good morning to you. Name here is Aubrey. I'm located in Brentwood in Essex currently. I'm round a friend's house, and I'm just demonstrating the gateway to him, how it works. He's licensed. Also, his call sign is M0BAW, and his name's Don, from M7 SDA.
So who is this radio for, and ultimately is it worth £600? Well, I think this radio is absolutely perfect for someone who commutes on a daily basis. They might have a bit of a long commute, they want to transmit APRS, and they're also in range of a C4 FM repeater. And if you're doing a lot of motorway miles, then the speaker system is possibly the best out on the market in terms of cutting through that road noise. If you like APRS, then it's brilliant because it has full duplex on the radio, so if you could be having a QSO on your nearest 70cm either analog or C4 FM repeater, and the radio will happily beacon your APRS packets on the sub VFO on 2 meters all the while. But personally, I really can't see much use of the radio in the shack. Although most of my testing has been shack based, I've really found the value in the radio and why it's worth £600 when taking it mobile. If you're going to install it in your car, do a proper separation installation with it, with the head just up the front and then the main body of the radio either underneath the seat or in the boot, it makes perfect sense because that's where it belongs. In the shack, if you're after something for APRS, well, pretty much any radio will do that with a TNC or even a DigiRig. See my video on the DigiRig just up there. Using some Direwolf software or the sound modem software that's available, it's easily done. If you're after something for C4 FM in a shack, well, that will depend on whether you're looking to get to a local repeater that might be just a little bit out of range of a handheld. But you could go for something like an FTM 200 or an FTM 300. You're getting most of the functionality of the 500, but at a slightly reduced cost. If you're not in range of any C4 FM repeaters or gateways, as I'm not here, well, then you're probably going to go down the hotspot route, and in which case I'd recommend probably the Yaesu FT5 as a really good option. You know, about cheaper than just over half the price of an FTM 500, but you're getting most of the functionality of the FTM 500 in the FT5. But you know, you're looking at a 5-watt handheld rather than a 50-watt mobile. But it's surprising how similar the two radios are. If you don't want to go to the expense of an FT5 and understand it is an expensive handheld, well then maybe an FT70 might be the job for you if it gets you onto C4 FM, or you could look for maybe an older FT3 or an FT2 or even the original FT1. There are options, that's what I'm saying. There are options if you're looking for a hotspot solution in the house, then a handheld might be that solution to get you on C4 FM. And of course, it's also worth just as a footnote mentioning that you can always cross mode using an MMDVM hotspot from a DMR device such as an Anytone 80D878, cross mode that to C4 FM as well. So there are certainly options, and if you've got an open spot, you can also do it from D-Star too. Anyway, that's a complete sidetrack there, but that's also just worth mentioning. So finally, is it worth £600? And I can only talk from my own experience and say, for me, it's not. But only because I don't have a car that I'm installing it into. I don't do a long commute every day, and therefore it's not the radio for me. But as I say, it might be the radio for you if you do have a long commute, if you are installing it in the car. I mean, if you want to use it in the shack, there's nothing to stop you using it in the shack. It's just not how I would imagine doing it. But it is a radio that's actually made me realise that I quite like C4 FM, and it was the catalyst for me getting the FT5. I would never have bought the FT5 without having played with the FTM 500 and realising, oh, actually, C4 FM is a mode that I've played around with in the past, but up until the FTM 500 and the FT5, I've never actually had access to on a daily basis, and certainly never owned kit for. So it's nice that I've been able to go, actually, I do want to explore the C4 FM and YSX system. I'm going to pick up an FT5, and now I have all three main digital modes at my disposal. I've now got the FT5 for C4 FM, I've got my Anytone D878 for DMR, and I've also got my ID52 and my IC705 for D-Star. So there are my thoughts, but I'd be really interested to know what your thoughts are, particularly if you already own an FTM 500, and I want to know where you're using it. Are you using it in the shack, or are you using it mobile? And are you looking to buy a mobile radio, and is the FTM 500 at the top of your shopping list? Comments in the section down below, please. If you've liked this video, there's a button for that. There's another button that seems to work just fine too. There's another video just coming up over here that the algorithm thinks that you might like next. And until next time, 73. Bye-bye.